Greetings, guardsmen and yeomen. Today we're looking into one of the more distrusted yet necessary military forces of the faithful, the Crusader Knight Orders. As the Port of the Hell opened and demons began flooding into the Levant, Pope Urban II came upon a major problem. They were in dire need of soldiers to fight this threat, and they did have hundreds of some of the best trained fighters, trained since birth in war and ready to face the foe, but it was their brothers of these same warriors that caused the calamity. Could they be trusted for this task? But with reports coming out of the Levant getting worse by the day, the Holy See could look past the betrayal of the Templars to accept the help of the other orders, but not without issues and definitely not without security guarantees. So let us look into the histories of these orders and their role within the front lines of the Crusade, a role that has not ended since 1099. The orders fight in constant penitence for the actions of the Templars. Their goals are to die in battle, for their sacrifices act as a small reconciliation to the actions of their brothers. First, we're going to have to address the big and possibly demonic elephant within the trench. The Holy Orders did not exist, at least not in the way that we know them, before the First Crusade. Yes, this even includes the Templars. Their foundation wouldn't come until 1129. Only the orders of St. Lazarus and the Hospitallers of St. John could claim to exist before the First Crusade, though only as volunteer hospitals and not as military orders. In fact, it would be because of the aftermath of the First Crusade that the orders themselves existed in the way that we know now. After the capture of Jerusalem, many pilgrims began making their way to the Holy Land. They came from all walks of life, from peasants and clergymen to merchants and noble lords. All of them would carry their belongings with them on this pilgrimage, either on their person or in large baggage trains. This, along with the large stretches between the cities and forts, the vast area of the Levant, made the pilgrims prime targets for brigands and other raiders, with many setting up ambushes along the pilgrimage routes. This, combined with the levels of disease and the other untamed dangers of the Holy Land, made it a daunting task to reach the city. This problem led to an opportunity for bands of knights that had also arrived into Levant for pilgrimage. Able to make good upon their holy mission of protecting the faithful and repentance for their sins, for fighting off those that would seek to harm the pilgrims, they were able to get some pretty good coin out of the deal doing what they do best. Much like when a gambler enters Freeside trying to get to the Strip, the knights began offering protection services to the processions, crossing the Holy Land as they entered the port cities, before expanding to other services, most notably medical work and other charitable organizations. Even banking, though the latter would lead to the very downfall of our world's Templars. The orders were not just made up of knights. In fact, the vast majority of its members were non-noble laymen known as sergeants. Forming the order's main lines of spearmen and archers while in combat, they conducted many operational duties. Numerous non-combatants conducted the day-to-day operations. They conducted medical, logistical, diplomatic, and monetary services. Some orders even attached to convents, allowing nuns to assist in these operations, most notably the Hospitallers that had nuns operating as nurses in their hospitals. These were both military organizations, literal private armies of faith, able to run entirely on their own accords, as well as charitable groups, providing goods and services to the faithful. In fact, it was a statement as a charitable group that allowed them to remain very independent. They answered to no kings or nobles, but to the will of God, allowing them to operate completely how they see fit, only answering to the Pope's calls for crusades. Many orders, in fact, started off as self-funded hospitals, most notably the Teutonic, Hospitallers, and the Order of St. Lazarus, with the knights acting as their hospital guards, while also doing the bodyguard role. And it is a role that has continued to the modern day. Ever wonder why there are so many Catholic hospitals? Look no further than the Crusader orders. Many still exist, now mostly just as charitable organizations. The Holy Order's role in organizations are vastly different than what is usually thought of when thinking of the orders. The knights only made up a fraction of their order, and most were non-combatants performing charity services. They weren't just soldiers, though that was their second major goal, was defending Christendom. Now, does this affect the enjoyment of Trench Crusade at all? The fact that these orders didn't exist at the start of the calamity, and the Templars couldn't have been around to actually create the betrayal in the first place? No, of course not. We're looking at a series that has literal Deus Ex Machina, and a church that can use divine metal to form ballistic missiles, and have a literal space program by 1899, I think we can look past the Knight Orders not being around in 1099 for a good story. In fact, with that story, the Knight Orders are so vastly different than what they are in our timeline. No more are they a charity organization, but almost mindless automata warriors for the church. So let's take a look at the current setting of 1914 and just how much they have fallen and changed due to this betrayal. Currently, there are thousands of orders fighting upon the front lines for the church, all within various standing. Most are sanctioned orders, like the Hospitallers, able to enjoy at least a little bit of praise and support from faithful command. The sanctioned orders can have whole armies of knights and sergeants, with entire logistics trains, and can conduct war within vast, mobile fortresses riding across no man's land, to others only able to claim a handful of members. There are other orders that are simply tolerated, much like the trench programs, as long as their weapons remain pointed towards the enemy, and they can keep to the four rights, they can gain at least a modicum of support. This includes the Order of Iscariot, being named after Judas's unconfirmed surname and based upon the corruption of the Latin word Sicarius, meaning killer or assassin. They are known to have strange rites that border upon the heretical, and are only tolerated as long as they focus upon the war. Though with being named after Judas, I don't know how long that will last. Other orders are complete renegades, refusing the four rights and doing their own thing, though having no support from the church, and are even attacked by the church should they be spotted. All orders sanctioned by the church maintain what is known as the four rights, along with the will of sacrifice. Much like the Codex Astartes, a guideline for the Space Marines, these rights are in place to act as guidelines for the Crusader orders, and as well as a security guarantee for the church. All orders must follow these rights to the letter, to get any assistance from church forces, and to avoid unnecessary bloodshed and assault by these same forces. Per the lore, we know of the four rights as follows. The first right, propagation of the faith. The Crusader novitiate is subjected to a months-long period of indoctrination, both through the studying of the precepts of the Crusader Order, as well as being subjected to the endless broadcasts of propaganda films by the Ministry of Propagation of Virtue. The lessons are fed directly into the optic nerves of the initiates by the esoteric mind-altering machines of the ministry. The second rite, chemical baptism. The Crusader is immersed in a bath of powerful holy chemicals, specifically created to change their body chemistry and grant great strength and stamina. This comes at a cost, as the terrible fumes ruin their lungs, making it necessary for them to breathe from tanks of oxygen enriched with incense. Their larynx, usually littered with cancers, is removed, and in their place an amplifier is installed, allowing the Crusader to speak. The third rite, the armor of God. The Crusader is then taken to the Order surgeons, where they must endure the most painful rite. Their bodies are inscribed with gilded arcs of scripture, the words of their God written in golden ink across their body, as well as within. Their body is flayed open and the oath of penitence is scribed upon their very bones, after which they are sewn up and left to heal. These holy scripts ensure the immediate death and damnation should the knight ever waver in their commitment to God and church. The fourth rite, healing visions. After their painful surgery, the Crusader is brought to the healing ward. Their recuperation might take several months, and the entire time they are subjected to a battery of powerful, mind-altering drugs. The Crusader's mind is open to what surely must be the voice of God, and there are many scribes huddled around the recuperating Crusaders, furiously scribbling as they attempt to capture each prophetic utterance. What we can see with the four rites is that the knights are heavily modified by chemicals from the Mendel's order, and indoctrinated with propaganda, sometimes directly to their very corneas, by the Ministry of Propagation of Virtue. All in the effort to create a perfect holy warrior, immune to the corrupting forces of hell, and constantly driving to their goal of righteous sacrifice in defense of the faithful. Just in case, a safety feature in the form of the scripture, written on the very bones of the novitiate, will kill them should they ever try to leave the orders or betray the church in any way. The process of forming a knight seeming very similar to the creation of the Space Marines, sharing a lot to the formation of the Black Templars and other Crusader chapters in 40k, especially with the mental indoctrination. The knights give their minds and bodies to the church, and their orders have given up much of their free will and autonomy, known to the orders in our timeline and what can be assumed for the orders before the Four Rites were introduced. Their bodies are racked with cancers, and are forced to breathe through oxygen tanks and speak through amplifiers. An oath of sacrifice carved on their very bones that will kill them should they betray. With these, we can see why some orders balk at the rites and choose to become renegades. It is well known that the Templars caused the calamity, and for Pauper and Prince alike, it causes no short of suspicion upon the other Crusader orders, and it's these rites that give ease and a sense of security to the people and governments when spotting a band of knights, though some orders refuse the rites altogether and the loss of autonomy that comes with them, and in turn they are cast out of the faithful. Hated by all, they become roving bands of raiders and thieves, robbing the very people they once swore to protect. Though others actually keep to themselves while still aiding the faithful, though in their own way, appearing on battlefields to assist in assaults or defend towns in the Levant, before slinking back into the desert sands. Others are tempted by archdevils, falling much like the Templars did and becoming the very thing they were created to destroy. Now, let's take a look at the orders that we'd be seeing on the battlefields of the Crusade. Several have actually been name-dropped so far in lore, being the Teutonic Order, Hospitallers, Order of the Dragon, and of course the Templars. Though we're going to have to look through some speculation to be needed to bring them all together, as long as getting into some of the other orders that are very constant in the Levant during the Crusades. So we're going to look into their histories and get some ideas about some of the operations they've been conducting for the Crusade, and what's their overall position. The first order we'll look at is the Knights of the Holy Sepulchre. They're one of the earliest military orders formed by the Holy See in 1099. Their main goal was to defend the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, and to defend the Kingdom of Jerusalem and its kings. It became one of the largest military orders in history, with their white field with a red Jerusalem cross becoming the symbol of the Kingdom of Jerusalem, and taking part in numerous battles to defend the city. The order shifted its main focus to guarding the Pope after the fall of the kingdom in 1291, with some of its order remaining behind to maintain the Church as a Franciscan order, and are still considered the Knights of the Holy Land by the Catholic Church. The order still exists today with over 30,000 members worldwide, answering the Pope's call as a religious organization. We know very little of these knights within Trench Crusade. Their main goal was the defense of the Holy Sepulchre and the Kingdom of Jerusalem, which we can clearly see has already failed as the church and city are both gone, and the kingdom never formed, though their connection to the pontiff would place them as defenders of the Holy See, alongside the Swiss Guard in Rome, as long as being one of, if not the first, military orders designated for the Crusade by the pontiff, serving as a proving ground for the rites, and the knights themselves would be hell-bent on retaking the city and restoring the Church of the Holy Sepulchre to its former glory. Next up is the Order of St. Lazarus. Operating since before the First Crusade, the Order was officially founded in 1130, with the mission to operate and defend a leper hospital within Jerusalem. The Order of St. Lazarus has a distinct green and white livery that has become well known among the faithful. Their main goal is the treatment of leprosy. Then they have treated the disease across the Levant, and help anyone that comes through the doors of their hospitals. There is even a unit of monastic brothers that have contracted the disease themselves, but have continued to protect the order, taking part in multiple battles and sieges in defense of the faithful. The Lazarus will even accept knights from other orders that have contracted leprosy into their ranks, allowing them to continue the fight while they seek treatment. The Order of St. Lazarus still exists to this day, providing medical treatment worldwide, even forming medical units for war zones, being still officially recognized by multiple countries. The Order of St. Lazarus would have a very interesting story within Trench Crusade, an order of knights suffering from disease but willing to continue to fight to defend the faithful, all while assisting the sick wherever they go. The order is predominantly a medical, non-military order anyway, and would more than likely run the hospices of New Antioch, with roaming doctors assisting the sick wherever they can find them within no man's land. Perhaps a rivalry forming with the Black Grail, while having a military wing similar to that of the Sacred Affliction, suffering from leprosy and accepting those with the disease into their ranks as knights. Now let's get into one of the larger, more recognized orders of the Crusaders, the Hospitallers of St. John, or simply the Hospitallers. One of the largest and most well-known of the orders next to that of the Templars, and probably the only piece of canon art we have for the Crusader Knights, the livery of a field of black with a white 8-pointed cross is probably one of the more recognizable symbols of the Crusader orders. Formed to protect the hospital of St. John within the city of Jerusalem, while also caring for the sick and poor of the city, they were officially recognized by the Pope in 1113, though there is evidence of the group existing in one form or another much earlier than that. The Hospitallers became known for numerous hospitals across the Levant, even becoming the catch-all term for hospital. They became militarized in 1120, taking part in numerous campaigns for the faithful across the Levant, most notably the Siege of Acre in 1291. After the fall of Jerusalem in 1291, the Hospitallers would move to the island of Rhodes. Now going by the Knights of Rhodes, they began hounding Muslim shipping routes and provided safe haven for Christian corsairs. The order even becoming adept at naval combat as well during this time, until they were forced to move again, this time in 1530, by the Ottomans, though not after months of brutal fighting over their fortress. The Ottomans let the Knights leave in good standing, a decision they would come to regret as the Knights set up on Malta. Becoming the Knights of Malta, they began doing the exact same thing as they did before, hounding the shipping lanes of the Muslims, and providing safe haven for Christian corsairs. The Ottomans would try to lay siege to Malta to destroy the order for good, though they'd be repelled by the Knights. This wasn't the only operation conducted by the Hospitallers. The order was active across Europe, assisting in the Reconquista of Spain, along with several other crusades, even being considered the main papal army, though refusing any integration with the papal states to keep their autonomy. The order even set up a colony in the New World, though it would be quickly absorbed into Spanish holdings. The order can be seen as probably the most successful Crusader organization still in existence today, operating as a medical and charity organization. Within Trench Crusade, the Hospitallers are known as some of the most well-respected Crusader knights. Staunch supporters of the Church and of the Four Rights, they can bring armies of hundreds of knights and sergeants into battle. It is stated that they can ride in giant mobile fortresses that trundle across no man's land looking for their next objective, their armor appearing to be the same Crusader pattern seen at the start of the Crusade, full plate mail with Crusader helms favoring swords and shields, ready to rush down the enemy to engage in melee. The Order are more than likely kept to a similar history that they held in our timeline up to the initial betrayal, before branching off wildly, as they don't appear to have become the Knights of Rhodes or Malta, as they are shown in their original colors. But the Order still remains on the front lines of the Levant and Spain, blunting the heretics' assaults in those regions, while also being able to take to the high seas to bound heretic vessels, and to put up some resistance in the Mediterranean with the Christian forces. The Hospitallers being one of the more versatile Crusader orders available to the Church. Now let's move on to an order that we at least have some bit of lore on the actions they have taken within the Crusade, the Order of the Dragon. The Order of the Dragon is famous for one man, Vlad Tepes, or better known as Vlad the Impaler. The order was founded in 1408 and was active till about the late 16th century, founded by King Sigismund of Hungary and Croatia as a noble order to defend the southern borders of Europe, mostly from the Ottomans, and was filled with the king's personal allies and best nobles. Now, Vlad's actions against the Ottomans deserve their own video entirely, but it was enough to be lauded in his home country and spurn rumors of savagery and the start of the vampire mythos that would follow Vlad throughout his legacy. But his efforts to turn back the Ottomans, using everything from plague victims and, of course, the impaled Ottoman prisoners, turned a much larger Ottoman force back and saved Wallachia, earning his title as Son of the Dragon, or Dracula. Keep in mind his father was also known as the Dragon for his connection to the Order, hence why his name was Son of Dragon, and served as the King of Wallachia till he was removed by power from the other members of the Order, as he fell out with the other nobles, mostly due to changing politics and his actions against the Ottomans. Now, the Order of the Dragon is one of the few orders to have their deeds mentioned in lore, with the Order turning back the attacking heretical legions after the fall of Constantinople, where Vlad and his army turned back the invaders and impaled over 1 million heretics on spikes, a number that could be possibly embellished a bit. I don't really know how you can impale over 1 million people at once, but I digress. The Order is seen as a major force within the Church, and possibly they're not just a Crusader faction, but might be their own faction as well. We'll have to wait and see as some more lore gets released as we get closer to the rulebook. there is some interesting statements about vampires within the church sources. For the last of the major orders that are still loyal to the church, we're going to go with the Teutonic Order. For the Teutonic Order, they don't deal with the same levels of stigma and distrust that the other Crusader Knight orders deal with. The order was the foundation of Free Prussia, and the Free Prussian nobility proudly shows off their Teutonic heritage, the order having this nostalgic hero worship within the Free State. The order is best known for the Northern Crusades waged against the Northern heretics. This area was particularly the Baltic, and more than likely against the Lithuanians and the Old Prussians that lived in the area, who best guessed in Trench Crusade either became followers of devils, or more interestingly, kept their old gods, as it is stated that the power of belief can empower any form of deity, and it is very open-ended within Trench Crusade lore. In our timeline, the order would be founded in 1190 in Acre, by German merchants and nobles defending the city and setting up a military hospital. The order played a key role in defending the eastern borders of Europe from invaders in Transylvania in 1211, before moving on to northeastern Europe, where it founded a militant principality with support of the HRE in Poland to convert the heathens of the Baltics and defend Christian territory as part of the Northern Crusades until 1410, where the order would overstay their welcome and became known as their own independent state, away from the influences of Poland and the HRE. They began moving in German planters and forcing the native populations away from their homes, forming secular armies and trying to change the Baltic territories to fit their own image as a Christian principality. It would be the Battle of Grunwald against Poland that shattered the might of the order, and the marriages between the Poland-Lithuanian and HRE nobility that would erode the last of the order's support. Though it would be the principality that this order formed that would create the state of Prussia. In 1525, the Grand Master of the order switched to Lutheranism and began giving his fealty to Poland, forming the original state of Prussia that we know as today. As the lands changed to Protestantism, the order was kicked out and became a purely religious and charitable organization, and are still active to this day. The order seems to play a bigger role in the formation of Free Prussia, as the Protestant split never occurred in Trench Crusade, meaning that the lands that formed Free Prussia were still under order control at the time of their creation. The nobles of Prussia trace their heritage back to the order and proudly show off their colors, though it seems that the order is constantly spoken of in a past tense when mentioned, meaning that either the order was dissolved into the Free State entirely, or were crushed in another version of Grunwald or other calamity. Poland-Lithuania exists as a fellow Christian nation, so we may just have to wait and see about Poland's origins to get more on the fate of the order. When it comes to their armor, the order is known for being one of the more striking in their armor design, with horns and other religious symbols being seen on their helms, seeking to scare their opponents, making them believe that demons and angels were coming for them, though these were not worn in combat. And their symbol of a white field with a black 8-pointed cross is a very common symbol. The forces of the order are likely no more and are part of Free Prussia, absorbed into the military of the state. The last of the major orders we're going to be getting into is that of the arch-traitors themselves, the Templars. The bringers of hell on earth and the architects of the original betrayal. Much like the other orders, they didn't start before the First Crusade, but in 1119, and being officially recognized in 1129 by the Holy See. Founded as a force of knights to protect pilgrims and holy sites across the Levant, they were predominantly a military order, taking part in numerous battles and being the main go-to order of the Crusader kingdoms. The Templars are probably the most prolific of the holy orders. Look no further to games like Assassin's Creed, among many other games, documentaries, movies, and books that feature the order as this mysterious force keeping the grandest secrets of the church hidden under lock and key, or as these ultimate villains pulling the strings of the world behind the scenes. But why is this? Why are the Templars perceived in this way? The main answer to that question is money, and their connection to the early forms of banking seen in the Western world. The Templars not only protected the pilgrims and holy sites, they protected the merchants and lords as they moved through the Levant. A lord could go to the banking house owned by the Templars in their home country and give them the money they wished to use on pilgrimage. They would receive a check for those funds, and if you brought that check to the banking house in Jerusalem, you'd get that money back, minus a bit of interest paid to the Templars, in order to keep your money safe in transit. In fact, it's the Templars credited with the rise of banking houses seen in Europe. with many of these banking houses continuing to operate in some form to this day. The wealth the Templars amassed allowed them to fund crusades themselves, placing several kings and multiple nobles in their debt, as they were able to provide loans for those heading to war, and amass one of the largest private armies seen in the Middle Ages. Keep in mind that the Templars were independent. They answered to no state as a charity organization. It was this indebting of kings that would end up being the undoing of the Templars. The Templar Knights were mainly based in France. This is where the majority of their recruits came from and where most of their holdings were located. French King Philip IV happened to owe the order a lot of money for assistance in funding of his failed crusade, so much so that he actually defaulted on his loans to the order. The king was also very concerned at the power of the Templars, as they were one of the most powerful orders in Europe, and didn't answer directly to the king but to their own laws, with entire armies located within France. This would lead to the galaxy brain move of starting a bunch of rumors declaring the Templars devil worshippers and a sinful organization, that they refused Christ and even pissed upon holy symbols. The king began to systematically nationalize the holdings of the Templars within France, and even killed several of their Grand Masters. Initially, the Pope defended the Templars from these accusations, until King Philip was able to gain confessions, though these confessions were definitely under duress, and not the most accurate of information, of the worship taking place. The Pope somehow believed these confessions, more than likely because the pontiff was in the French king's pocket at the time, leading to the execution of their leaders internationally and the disbanding of chapter houses across Europe. Most historians agree that this was all just an elaborate scheme to get out of paying the money he owed to the order, and to curb the power of the Templars as an independent force within France. This is also where a lot of the rumors of devil worship among the Crusader Knights begins, and where the demon lord Baphomet becomes more well known, as the king declared that they worshipped this demonic lord. The systematic destruction of the order, where not even offshoots exist today, and much of their records being burned by the French, thanks again Philip, asshole, along with the relics they had in their collections, the myriad of holy sites the order defended for the church, and the gold they collected from their banking operations, possibly hidden away by the few survivors of the order, inspired numerous mysteries and conspiracy theories around the Templars. Treasure hunters and explorers have traced these rumors for centuries. They are connected to relics like the Ark of the Covenant, where it is said that they brought it to Ethiopia, along with relics like the Holy Grail, among many others. For conspiracy theorists, it's still rumored that they control whole governments, even at the end of the order, pulling the strings of the world from hidden fortresses. There are even rumors that they hid treasure as far away as modern-day Canada. You know, you can make a show out of that. Oh yeah. We know the story of the Templars well within Trench Crusade. The order fell to demons while fighting in the city of Jerusalem in 1099, finding a new ruler in the rubble of the city. After feeling that the Lord had betrayed them on the march to Jerusalem and the loss of Bishop Adamar their morality, they accepted the deal and their new masters, opening the gate to hell and becoming a heretic legion that continues to hound the faithful to the current day. There are numerous holy orders created throughout history, and we'd be here all day just trying to list them all, not even including the ones that are just offshoots of the ones already discussed. If there is a hospital or a city needing protection, or a crusade called by a pontiff, you can bet that a holy order has been informed to conduct its defense or assault. There are other holy orders that were formed to protect royal families or specific groups of pilgrims. Within Trench Crusade, multiple northern orders have been formed to assist Novgorod and the Kalmar Union in defense against the hell portal that has been opened there. And with that, we come to the end of our discussion of the Crusader orders. Thank you all for sticking around this long. It ended up being a lot longer than I expected. There's just so much history with these orders. Independent armies of Christ that ran churches and banks in our timeline, and brainwashed super soldiers within Trench Crusade. They are a constant force upon the front lines of the Crusade, defending God and Church. And they've influenced a lot, not just in Trench Crusade. So thank you all again, and keep an eye out for the next one. I hope you all have a great day, and if you excuse me, I have to get back to the archives again.